Welcome for today's study. Today's theme will be autosuggestion. This is what we will be reflecting, helping us in understanding who we are, what we already are capable of working within ourselves. We start by reflecting, understanding that we are all thinking beings. We all, as immortal beings, spirits in evolution, souls, who are temporarily transiting through a physical body, we are constantly thinking. Therefore, we are constantly in a process of autosuggestion. So the question is, which kind of autosuggestions are we nourishing our minds? Are we feeding our minds which impact our mental and emotional health and therefore our experience as we are in a new body? So we start by thinking together. We started by understanding that the autosuggestion is a psychological technique developed by the pharmacist Emily Coué at the beginning of the 20th century. It is a form of self-suggestion in which individuals guide their own thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. This technique is usually used as self-hypnosis. Well, we may think that self-hypnosis is something very huge, very magical, but we are in a process of self-hypnosis on a daily basis. It could be in a negative, toxic, destructive way, or it could be, if you are wiser, if you are more conscious, in a process to promote our evolution in terms of becoming healthier, more creative in the way that we are aware and choose which kind of thoughts that we choose to nourish and therefore to repeat in our minds through the self-hypnosis, which is a process of repeating our thoughts. Could be from an unconscious perspective in a very automatic way and usually very negative, self-destructive and self-limited, but actually the universe is inviting us that we become aware and that we can transcend these eventual limitations, because we are essentially beings very creative in our nature, and we can stimulate these powers that we bring within ourselves and therefore becoming healthier. We also further reflection and understanding that autosuggestion techniques are ways or modes of influencing our thoughts and behaviors. The goal is to modify or channel emotions, reflections, and behaviors with the idea of producing a positive transformation. Let's engage in this process. We are aware that we all go through challenging moments in our experiences, and they are transitory, they are temporarily, but also in those moments, if we learn more about who we are, that we, despite of the challenging moments that we face within ourselves, we carry the complete power to actualize our way of thinking in relation to what we are facing, and in that way transforming ourselves and also potentializing ourselves through the challenging moments, because challenging moments are very positive experiences for those who are already more aware, for those who understand life beyond physicality, for those who understand that we as immortal beings are back to this school earth in order to evolve, in order to potentialize ourselves, in order to develop a self-healthy internal communication, let's say like that. In order for us to carry on in our reflections, we now consider the thought from the benefactor Joana de Angelis in her book, Life, Challenges and Solutions. I quote, "Self-knowledge reveals to the person its possibilities and limitations, opening space for renewal and conquest of new horizons, of health and self-empowerment without guilt, without hard feelings. Self-knowledge is fundamental, that we on daily basis have some moments for ourselves that we can learn, if we haven't yet learned, to observe what we are thinking, what we are feeling, to become more conscious of our own limitations, which we all bring within ourselves, and also or possibilities that we also bring within and practice the stimulation of the possibilities, although sometimes is a bit challenging, but that is the learning process that we go through, so that we intensify the possibilities and diminish more the limitations, using our conscious mind to do that as a free choice. New horizons, because we are here not to carry on in a depressive, negative way about people, about situations, about ourselves. Life is as it is, people are as they are, and we are in a school of learning called Earth, where it still is a planet of trials and expiations, where the majority of people, spirits who are reincarnated, still are dealing with their own limitations, and we include ourselves in this process as learners, as we all are. But we are here not to intensify that. We are here to override our own old memories through the new learnings, through new creative aspects that we stimulate within ourselves in a proposal of self-love. Self-discovery, as Joana de Angelis carries on in the book The Conscious Being, I quote, self-discovery aims to make the person aware of what they need, how to do it, and when to start a new phase. New phase can be in any moment, any second, that we are exploring ourselves through acknowledging what is going on, learning to give names to our different emotions, learning to take responsibility to whatever emerges within ourselves. That is part of our individuality, which is in a constant changing process as long as we use the autosuggestions to be more creative and to break free from any limited self-obsessed idea that perhaps we may bring within. And also self-discovery, we will find out what we need to do, because becoming aware of the limitations, becoming aware of the potentialities, we train the self-recovery, let's put it like that. And although what I'm feeling is negative, it works against me, it is destructive, it is toxic, I acknowledge that, but at the same time, I develop this self-control, that I remind myself that I have new possibilities in ways of thinking that empowers me from the self level onwards. And also, Joana de Angelis carries on helping us to explore our journey within. In the same book, The Conscious Being, I quote, self-encounter can be achieved through reflective meditation, the effort to fix the mind on positive ideas, seeking to know who we are and what is the purpose of our bodily existence and the future that awaits us. Self-encounter is based, as the benefactor said, through reflective meditation. Here, when we use the word meditation, meaning the ability to think what we are thinking, the ability to observe our own thoughts or own feelings and filter what is right or what is good or what promotes inner health or not. And at the same time, also helping us to fix it, which means to correct when we detect any negative thought, idea, because that will impact us negatively on the emotional level and also on the behavior level. Sometimes we have negative frames of mind, which has to do with our inferior complex or low self-esteem or lack of self-worth. And in that way, we use the internal lenses to look onto others in that black, dark way, when in reality, that could be wrong. Other people may not necessarily be as we perceive them, because the perception is an internal reality from our belief systems, from our values that we still hold. And also when it's negative, that is a great opportunity that we have in the present to actualize ourselves. Always invest in this movement of self-actualization. Still, Joana de Angelis, in her book Self-Discovery and Inner Search, I quote, "The exercise of well thinking, eliminating the pernicious ideas to which one is addicted, constitutes a decisive step towards self-discovery." We don't need to be shameful. We don't need to be putting ourselves down. When we become aware of our imperfections, or shadows, or limitations, whatever word we use in terms of acknowledging our shadows, it is actually quite positive, and it shows inner strength, inner wisdom, inner awareness when we have ownership of our own limitations. Because the only way that we will correct and change any negative element within our consciousness, it is going through the first step, as Jung always says, to be aware, to take the responsibility, and there also the responsibility, which is autonomy, to overcome it with our creative minds, renewing our ideas that we are essentially beings of goodness, essentially beings of love, who bring within the inner power to always actualize our thinking in a constructive, positive way, according to the universal code of harmony, of peace, which we are all connected and interacting to. Still, Joana de Angelis, in the book Full Life, I quote, "Do not negotiate, neither play games, because any activity not structured in the laws of justice and charity further complicate the rehabilitation framework in which you find yourself." It's very important when we are reflecting about the autosuggestions that we don't try to manipulate our own thoughts, our own belief systems, that instead we try to be more honest and control whatever is there in an illusionary way that perhaps we conditioned ourselves in the past, which could be in this existence or previous existences. Not to negotiate. We are not doing any favor to anyone when we stand up for ourselves. And the correct way, I guess, it is to choose to follow the pathway of humbleness and charity within, so we can accept our own limitations without feeling shameful, without projecting, but sincerely trying to stimulate the inner progress, stimulating the inner potentials of the soul that still are awaiting for us as spirits to activate our free will, to stimulate our willpower, to develop the responsibility, which is the internal autonomy, to make different choices. Challenges, as I mentioned previously, are part of our existence. And especially when we reflect about our inner world, we have still facing great challenges. That is merely because the pride and selfishness still is very strong within us. But as more as we become aware in a loving way, we acknowledge that we already are positioning ourselves mentally through developing ideas of autosuggestion that overrides those patterns, that we choose not to be better than we are. We are accepting ourselves as valuable human beings, imperfect, perfecting ourselves. Each time when we are facing with our negative autosuggestions, sometimes fixed, negative, obsessed ideas, we may breathe in, bring the focus back to us, and remind ourselves, is the right moment for us now to step up and learn to think in a different way. Sometimes reading a book, talking to a friend, or sometimes even seeking professional help can also help us. And then we carry on with Lourdes Caterine, which is a spirit, in her book Conviver e Melhorar. I quote, "Do not forget that mental power, like any of the human faculties, is subject to the individual's control, who is responsible for directing it. The secret to be able to change a fact that seems difficult or disturbing is to realize which ideas or beliefs are moving your intimate world." If you ask ourselves now, what I'm thinking right now, what I'm feeling. We need to allocate some times that we're not rushing, crashing around and constantly agitated, so that we can make this deeper connection and then also evaluate with sincerity, analyzing if our inner world is promoting our inner harmony, inner peace, inner health, or if we realize that we are actually quite distressed and quite anxious and quite disturbed, afflicted. Usually that is already a red flag showing that our autosuggestion process is very negative, limited, and toxic. So once that is noted, we may immediately stop our thinking and start with new thoughts that will nourish our mind, such as, yes, today has been a very challenging day, yet I'm a learner of myself. Let's see what I can learn here in terms of promoting myself. Sometimes it is to hold short belief systems and just keep on repeating them, because that is the proposal of self-hypnosis, which actually is a process of autosuggestion. And as more as we keep on saying, I'm a valuable human being, I love myself, I respect myself, I'm learning everything that I need to learn as a natural process in my life, we are stimulating these more healthier ways that we address ourselves. Joana de Ângeles, a spirit, in her book Nascentes de Bênçãos, I quote, "When one decides to undertake some unusual, enriching, and noble activity that presents challenges and is moved by inner courage, can be said that one's self-determination is defined and in motion." It's interesting what we learn here regarding our study today about autosuggestions, because when one decides to undertake unusual, because the majority of humanity still is in the massification process. So the decision to grow out of the massification, it is actually an unusual decision, but very enriching, very noble, very empowering when we understand the law of evolution and stimulate our own inner determination. Because on the end of the day, our evolution does not depend on other people. It depends on ourselves. The way that we relate with us from the conscious and unconscious, from the rational, from the emotional level onwards, that will impact our choices, our decisions, and our behaviors. Therefore, we are responsible for our well-being everywhere where we are and with who we are also. It's not actually people who are responsible for our feelings, but we. And that is very good that we know, because we always can change. We always can admit when we are in a purely emotional state, as long as we become more economic in our words, we hold on, we control ourselves and train ourselves in the internal autonomy. Still, the benefactor carries on enlightening our minds. I quote, "Every achievement that is overlaid with moral and spiritual values faces countless difficulties which must be overcome. The risks of the incomprehension of others, the aggressions of the violent, the slander well presented by many, the exposure to ridicule, and the almost generalized disbelief constitute natural circumstances in the daily life of humanity." What the benefactor, Joana de Ângeles, is highlighting here for us, I think once we read it, when we hear that and think about it, very rarely someone on earth, all of us as learners, very rarely that we are freed from these kind of elements that we are facing. And that is not because people are bad and we are good. We are good in essence, that is true, but we are very imperfect. So we always are invited, when we come across of aggressions from others, people who slander about ourselves on the back, then let's analyze our inner world, what that awakes, what that brings up in us. Have we already established values, belief systems that we can sustain ourselves within our own individuality, within our own inner healthy references? Or do we feel that we need to really go down on the lowest sphere and criticize others and defend ourselves? That wouldn't be healthy. Because each time when we feel that we need to defend ourselves by others' shadows, that means that we are identifying our own shadows in relation to others. So that's, as Jung said, enlighten our own shadows so that we become more in harmony with our new belief systems, new ideas, new methods of auto-suggesting ourselves constantly in a constructive way, allowing other people to be as they want to be and the best that they can. Because the majority of us, we still are much more unconscious than conscious. So the one who frees himself, herself from within, we then have a bigger level of awareness, and therefore we don't need to react anymore in relation to any of those negative elements that perhaps we are facing through the interpersonal relationship, which is a social interaction which we all are part of. Always bear in mind, we do have options. The main point is to learn to control ourselves. In other words, to control our egos, to control our inner child, to control our own imperfections, and be willing to perfect ourselves, trying through exercises, renewing our thoughts. Joana de Angelis carries on saying, I quote, currently human beings are needed to attend well the spiritual emergency in order to be really happy. We can even ask ourselves, I am a happy soul on earth? And what is happiness to me in this stage of my evolution? Is it based on whatever is transitory, or did we promote ourselves already well beyond that while we are transiting within the physical aspect of life? Attend the spiritual emergency. What would that mean? We can even reflect about. And still the benefactor is answering to us and enlighten our consciousness by saying, I quote, a spiritual emergency signifies your awareness of your own conscience, your self-realization that is your responsibility to grow and love yourself. Auto-suggestions. Either we are in this auto-suggesting process, which is a self-hypnosis process, cultivating positive ideas, realistic ones, based on the elements of our internal potentialities, the virtuous aspects of ourselves, and therefore growing, maturing, becoming more grounded, centered, more in peace, more harmonious, therefore loving ourselves, because we are taking responsibility for that healing process to occur. Yet, if we are not engaged in that, because we still may be more in an immature state of mind, we still are under the auto-suggesting process, only that we are self-intoxicating us. We are promoting further the low self-esteem, the inferior complex, the anxiety, the anguish that we bring within, which is always the result of limited negative belief systems. Is fundamental, the awareness that we need to be conscious so that it doesn't dominate us, but we are dominating it. Still, Joana de Angelis, in her book Nascentes de Bênçãos, is clarifying to us, I quote, everyone is reborn on earth with higher objectives, such as self-awareness, personal and social progress. This is our objective, to be on earth, all of us. Doesn't matter what is or where our backgrounds. We have been reborn on earth, the great school of the souls, who are with the proposal of evolving, with the objective to become more conscious, more lucid of our inner world. We are not a physical body. We are spirits with the astral body who express ourselves through the physical body. But it's fundamental that we become aware what we are thinking, what we are feeling, and observing each moment, what are our auto-suggesting movements that we allow ourselves? In other words, what are we communicating to us constantly through our thoughts and ideas that we cultivate is fundamental, important to establish new goals so that we are not enslaved by the unconscious mind. It is in the field of ideas that the origin of action becomes reality. As each one thinks, ends up behaving accordingly, teaches Joana de Angelis. The field of ideas, as I repeat constantly, as we are here reflecting about autosuggestion, it is indispensable that we become aware which kind of ideas are feeding us in a healthy way. Because we can have ideas, thoughts that perhaps from an ego state of mind, we may think they are good, they're healthy, when in reality, they are quite limiting and quite ill thoughts sometimes, which can even end up in illnesses on the physical level, not to mention on the mental and emotional level as well. So as more as we study, as more as we explore ourselves, as more as we become lucid, then we can carry on in this inner exploratory aspect that we constantly engage in ourselves. As we have, let me see here where I am. Just a second. In the field, it's fundamental to understand that the development of virtue results from the effort to discern what produces good and progress. And again, discernment is a value of the higher consciousness, is a virtue. That I need to, in order to conquer that inner discernment, I go through a process of self-exploring myself and also to discern what is good from which perspective. I am analyzing my mind, my thoughts, my ideas from a bodily perspective, from a physical perspective, from a materialistic, reductionistic perspective, or are we already more aware that we are three-dimensional beings and therefore we are here to observe what good means under the universal code of evolution? That is important to reflect, because whatever I may consider good from the ego state of mind, that actually is not good. That is still reflects my negative elements or limited elements that I may still bring within myself. The mind, unaccustomed to relevant commitments, always finds illusory ways to postpone duties, teaches Joana de Angelis in her book, A Full Life. What is she actually helping us to observe? The mind unaccustomed, of our theme today is autosuggestion. So if my mind is unaccustomed to commit myself in what is good for everyone, what promotes the individuals and the society, then I could be under a process of autosuggestion, which is against the duty of my own progress, spiritually speaking. I may still be dominated by my inner illusions that I bring in terms of my thoughts, my ideas, my belief systems. That is easy to understand when we observe ourselves as immortal beings and have been going through different existences. We have one life, but many, many different existences. Therefore, we have lots of experiences that we went through already. But now it's time to reflect what is suitable for us and what not, because we are all evolving. And the mind is always in a process, as long as we choose, of actualization. If we don't actualize ourselves, if we are hooked in the autosuggestions in a self-obsessed way, then usually we become very ill mentally, emotionally. And if that is not tackled and addressed in the right moment, that will be drained through the physical illnesses. Because at the end of the day, our thoughts or ideas, they summarize in energy. Joana de Angelis says, I quote, spiritual affinities and animosities continue to nourish the individuals even beyond the physical death. We are immortal beings. We are thinking beings. We are emotional beings, expressing ourselves through the physical body. So once through a natural process of the physical death, but we will continue exactly the same way of thinking and feeling. And that will nourish ourselves either in a positive way, if we choose now to engage in the self-education process, in training our minds through auto-suggesting positive, constructive, virtuous belief systems, always values, thoughts that correspond to the universal law of love. Because once we engage in that level, we are not going back, we are not hurting ourselves, we are not hurting others, we are healing ourselves, and we also can cooperate in healing others, either through the time that we are in a physical body and even beyond that, because we carry on a life and carry on thinking in the same way. So it's more as we invest in auto-suggesting us constructive, positive. When we face challenging, I'm capable. Let me see what the universe is inviting me to learn through this experience. Let's learn to be patient. Let's learn to be tolerant. Let's learn to be forgiving. Let's learn to be cooperative towards the good of everyone. These kind of thoughts helps us intensively in our own healing process. And Joana de Angelis carries on by saying, I quote, the mind, the emotion, the behavior are, therefore, the mechanisms that account for the duties that result in the constant relationship between incarnate and disincarnate. We are constantly relating with other spirits, those who are in the flesh, in our family setting, in our workplace, wherever we are, with other people are spirits. But also the way that we think and feel, we are communicating with other souls, with other spirits. Therefore, auto-suggestion in a positive way, taking into account what we mentioned at the beginning, it is a process of self-hypnosis, meaning self-suggestions. Be attentive so that we may be more in charge of what we think, because we end up through a natural way communicating with other beings who think and feel in the same way. And surely we are here to heal ourselves and others, and it's only through the way of renewing our ideas, renewing our emotions. Joana continues, I quote, learn to observe in order to act with security. Do not allow yourself to be influenced by hasty opinions without logical structure, even if surrounded by attractive configurations. Let's be attentive. What we mentioned previously in previous slides already is fundamental to learn. And life is a school where we are with the possibility to learn in order to act securely, meaning act according to the natural laws in the universe, which is for the goodness of all, within the universal fraternity. Doesn't matter the background where people come from, doesn't matter their religions, their sexual orientation. That is completely irrelevant when we promote ourselves to a higher standard of understanding life from a rational, logical perspective. Usually the auto-suggestions in a negative way, limited way, that comes from an irrational state of mind, which needs to be actualized through time. And we, as the responsible ones to promote that, we have the free will and the willpower to activate it in any moment, as long as we may choose to do that. Fundamental to comprehend what Joana keeps on saying, I quote, the atavisms that remain in the behavior and mental reflection tend to lead the individual to repeat behaviors already experienced without allowing the awareness of greater interest in the new expressions of reality. Atavisms is the same as the ways that we conditioned ourselves in past existences. Could be in this one or in previous one, because we have been very unconscious in previous existences, but we thought we were thinking beings there and then, and we condition our belief systems or ideas We may be still unconscious today, and this is fundamental that we think about and become more lucid, more aware, so that we are no longer enslaved by auto-suggestions from the references from our, let's say, limited past, the ill ideas, the ill thoughts, which require our attention, because they will impact either promoting health or illnesses. They will impact us either promoting inner peace or disturbances. So we have the key to liberate ourselves from ourselves. Fundamental is still taking account too, as Joanna says, I quote, the habits of meditation with vitalized thoughts should constitute a process of maturation of ideas, so they have a useful meaning, providing inner growth. Habit of meditation. Do we have time every day for ourselves, even if it is some minutes, that we can switch off from everything and everyone and just stay with us from a sincere inner space to listen? How have we be relating with ourselves in relation to others? What are the emotions that may emerge? Have I been relatively patient today within the struggles and challenges of existence? Did I have inner space to forgive in case there was a need for that? Was it easy for me to let go any grudges that I may hold on? Was I able, and did I have the inner strength to renew my thoughts once I realized that I was really projecting my negativity on others? Was I able to think positively under the line of universal fraternity towards others, even knowing that perhaps they may be slandering, gossiping about myself? Despite of that, what came from them, was I able to emerge within myself and override my old habits that I may bring and potentialize in the new ones which I choose now to validate? And Joana de Angelis carries on now in the book Amor, Imbatível Amor. I quote, self-esteem in human life is of relevant results because it produces physiological phenomena which result from emotional stimuli on the brain neurons, which then produce enzymes that contribute to the well-being and joy. So here, the spiritual benefactor is helping us to understand that the cause of our joy, the cause of well-being, is the result, the way that we are suggesting ourselves, the way that we are communicating with ourselves. Therefore, auto-suggestions, being a process of self-hypnosis, is fundamental that we reflect the aspects of our inner higher self. Think about that we are good beings in evolution, that yes, we do mistakes, but we are not mistakes. Yes, we commit errors, but we are not failures. We are learners of ourselves, and we will try as many times as necessary to condition ourselves in the healthy way so that we heal our minds and therefore also promote our emotions, and therefore our behaviors also will be more on the lines of inner balance, centeredness, and groundedness that we can all train, because the universe is insisting in all of us to promote us spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally. Fundamental to understand that self-identity, as Joana de Angelis is stating here, as I quote, is to de-identify oneself from everything that has been assimilated by imposition, constraint, and circumstances of convenience. Remember, bear in mind that we are all beings in evolution. That means that we have been living in different existences under different situations and circumstances, and we condition ourselves. We bring ideas and thoughts that we now need to reflect. So when the benefactor said self-identify is to de-identify yourself, it means to identify with our higher self, with the core of ourselves, which is love. In order to identify myself, I need to break free, when she says, de-identify from everything that I was imposed on me. I was constrained. So I need to break free from those aspects now, not in an aggressive way and thinking negatively in an angry way against other people, situations, or even my past. It is embracing my own history through the process of self-love and understanding that in the present is the best moment that we can invest in our inner renewal process without blaming anyone or anything in our spiritual journey. Self-identification, although the diversity of concepts, can be considered as the achievement of noble and liberating values that become the person's supreme aspiration. What are we aspiring in our existences? Self-identification is not a process to identify ourselves with our ego state. No. Self-identification means that we are gradually learning to restore the inner connection and identifying ourselves with the divine within, the sacred within, the divine love within, the universal love within ourselves. The achieving noble and liberating values. Noble and liberating values. Liberating for us to liberate from our own shadows. Noble, be honest. Even if the majority of people are not, be honest. Be tolerant. Cooperate for the good of all, everywhere where we are. Be friendly. Respect others. Understand others. Be humble in what you know, understanding there is still pretty much to learn from the stage where we are. Be charitable. Charitable means be good. Develop good thoughts about others, even those who sometimes work against us. Give them the right to be in the place where they are temporarily. But we have the duty within ourselves to promote ourselves to a different inner space, a healthier one, a freer one, through our inner honesty that we are promoting. And in Romans chapter 12, we read, I quote, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what the will of God is, what is good, acceptable, and perfect." And also to carry on further reflecting, is still in Romans, now chapter 7. I quote, "I do not understand what I do, for I don't do what I would like to do, but instead I do what I hate. Now, if I do what I don't want to do, I recognize that the law is good." It's interesting to see that we bring the inner wisdom of discernment, but sometimes it may not be paying attention, because that is a very good reflection here giving to us, so that we can observe what we are suggesting ourselves with, that constantly we may be carry on overcoming and overriding our own mistakes, such as when the benefactor says, the monsters that are seen in others do exist, however, in the heart of those who detect them. This connection between the projection and the ego is carried out by a delicate unconscious mechanism of transfer of guilt, which seems to alleviate the accuser. It alleviates temporarily because we validated the ego state of mind. Through our own inferiorities, through our own shadows, through our own imperfections. So as more as we clean our heart through the inner transformation, through the self-empowerment, through the self-enlightening, when we take the responsibility of our own shadows, but transform them, bear in mind that we have a creative mind who can choose differently, better, always considering the good, we are also helping to free ourselves from the guilt conflict that we sometimes unconsciously bring within ourselves. It's not blaming us, neither blaming others. It is healing us and healing others, merely letting them be as they are, and us to choose to be better as we are. Autosuggestion is the means by which you can deliberately free your subconscious with thoughts of a creative nature, or neglect it and deny the existence of this power, thus allowing ideas of a destructive nature to fill your mind. Surely, we don't want to carry on intoxicating ourselves. We don't want to carry on stimulating our inner aggressiveness. Even when we talk about gossip and slander, that is the cruelty from the past that we still may be carrying today. So as more as we administrate our inner world consciously, we renew our thoughts towards brotherhood, towards fraternity, towards solidarity, towards becoming more flexible and understanding the differences and the different, which is part of the individuality of each person, of each spirit in evolution. Surely, when we reflect about accepting others as they are, we are not here reflecting or inciting that we validate the shortcomings of others. No, we respect that is what the other being is capable of doing, or even ourselves. But when it comes to us, we have the freedom that we can override our memories in any moment. The others will do that in their time. Autosuggestion consists of using certain words and phrases repeatedly in order to change your perception. It is a method of self-development used to create positive beliefs and break bad habits. Autosuggestion aims to cultivate ideas of self-appreciation, self-value, self-respect, self-forgiveness, self-love, and so on. Thoughts that promote well-being, create a healthy image, strengthens the willpower, nourishes our souls. So let's, with these few reflections that we presented here, take the opportunity to establish a time on a daily basis that we go to contact ourselves through meditation, through self-reflection. And it's more as we practice and stimulate our minds in this self-awareness, we actually can practice that on a daily basis wherever we are. Nourishing the soul can never happen when we are hating others, when we are gossiping, when we are slandering about others, when we are dishonest. Nourishing the soul can only happen when we are forgiving, when we are more tolerant, when we are more fraternal, when we cooperate more towards the goodness of all, when our inner proposal is to promote the goodness for all according to the universal code of goodness, which is love one another. In that way, I wish you much peace today, and I hope to see you soon for another reflection in another day. Much peace to all. Bye-bye.